Welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Gray. The best thing about being a nurse and entrepreneur over the last 25 years are the relationships I've developed and the people I've met. As a legal nurse consultant, I wanted you to hear from those amazing people in the legal and healthcare communities. I wanted you to hear who they are and to celebrate them with me. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. Let's dive into the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I am really super excited to welcome my guest, Tony Albrecht, to the podcast. I cannot wait to dig into this conversation with you, Tony. I really am looking forward to this. I appreciate you taking your time out to talk to my community and really dig into a really fun subject, in my opinion.
We're in the same boat on that, Anna, and I'm happy to take the time, and let's just based on the 5 minutes where we started rolling there, I think we're going to cover some really good ground here, some meaty stuff.
Awesome. Love it. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know your story because I've listened to your podcast. I've spent some time on your social media and I love your story. So if you could share your story with my audience about how you your journey on how you got to where you're at today, because it's a really great story.
Sure. And tell you what, I'm going to set a stopwatch, and I'm going to try to do this in less than 3 minutes.
Oh,
I'm known for meandering answers.
Okay.
So where I'm at today, and my name's Tony Albrecht, and I run a content agency called Contender, where we primarily do LinkedIn ghostwriting for lawyers. And if we rewind, I spent about 12 years practicing law. I graduated from law school at St. Louis University in 2009. I spent most of my time in practice doing insurance defense litigation, mostly on what they call the Madison County Asbestos Circuit, like the biggest center for asbestos cases in the U.S. And I say that I've torched my legal career twice. The first time was in 2013 when I sold all my stuff, quit my job, took a backpack and a one-way ticket to Bangkok, intending to basically spend a year traveling to see what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that 1 year turned into 4 years between full-time roles where I was still litigating on a contract basis, while also traveling, doing some entrepreneurial stuff, some creative stuff, meeting the woman who would become my wife and the mother of my children, Seville. We met in India in 2015, and eventually going back to litigating in St. Louis in 2017, spending another 4 years doing that, and coming to a point of needing to make a decision where when my wife agreed to move to St. Louis in 2017 after we'd gotten married, she told me I had 5 years before I would be moving to Canada. And like, okay. And I didn't know if she meant it. She did mean it. And come end of 2020, we were at a crossroads. Like, if we stay in St. Louis, I'm on track to make partner at the firm I'm at in 2021, at which point it gets difficult to walk away, just the money involved there. Or do we go to Canada with our 2 children under the age of 4? And at 39 years old, I start over. We chose that one. And I ended up leaving the practice of law entirely in the fall of 2021, taking a business development role with a friend's consulting company. He said part of the role is you need to learn how to do LinkedIn. And like any good lawyer or like any professional, right? I'm sure nurses are the same in most industries. You ignore LinkedIn, right? It's like where you put your digital resume. It's where you go to look for a job, and that's basically it. it was then that I started showing up in a different way and took a course called the Operating System. Justin Welsh, he's one of the godfathers of building businesses through LinkedIn. And the platform opened up in this totally different way for me. In late 2021, early 2022, I gained traction primarily writing about creativity, which was just something I was interested in and could talk about all day long, whether or not I was getting paid for it. And at that time, my goal was just to get in front of the leaders of nonprofit organizations who might be interested in a Salesforce implementation. That was my hustle. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing content just to try to get in on those people's feeds so that when I sent them a DM, they were more likely to at least respond to me, if not give me the meeting. I was at least fairly effective in those things. I wasn't as effective at actually selling Salesforce implementations, but in 2022, then it gained traction. One thing led to another. And eventually I got introduced to the idea of ghostwriting, and then the idea of doing it for lawyers. And, one thing led to another. And here we are almost 2 years into building Contender, where it's been a very wild ride. And that was over 4 minutes, Anna.
You fit it all in. That was pretty impressive.
I didn't even mention the Guamanian jail. I didn't even.
That's right.
I didn't even bring up the real origin story.
That's true. Goodness. There's so much packed in that story that we don't have time for. But you managed to pack in your whole story in a nutshell in that 4 minutes. So I appreciate that. I love the story. I actually want to kind of back up on, you making that decision to just kind of drop it and go, all right, we're going to go to Canada. Was it something that, you had been, I know for me, I love the freedom of, being, because you had already experienced it once. You had quit the business before. So you kind of had this feeling of, running your own thing or doing your own thing and not being tied to, is that part of that decision where you felt it before and you were like, I think I can do something on my own? Or how did that decision kind of come about?
That's a good question. So the way I think about it now, I think about it in an entrepreneurial lens and also a creative lens. Mm-hmm. And, I put out my first book almost 2 years ago now on my 40th birthday. Mm-hmm. It's titled In the Creative Arena. And the basic premise is we are all creative beings. That so much of life is a creative act, entrepreneurship being one version, right? What is more creative than to take in just an idea and then turn it into a thing that can employ people, that can deliver value to customers and clients, can make all these things happen, right? And I was very creative early, and it was like my creative muscles atrophied as I went through school. And by the time I got to law school, I just wanted the safe path to success and happiness. I wanted to be okay. I wanted to not, I was afraid of getting the wrong answer. I didn't want to get answers wrong. I didn't want to be exposed for the fraud that I was afraid that I was. So I was deeply insecure. My drinking was already getting out of hand by the time I started law school. By the time I finished law school in 2009, I was a mess, which is how I came to be in that Guamanian jail cell on Thanksgiving night of 2009. My rock bottom, and they say you hit rock bottom when you stop digging, and I did indeed stop digging that night. But so all that to say that from really 2010 going forward to 2013, where I took that first leap to say, I think if I just create space, I'll figure out some good ways to fill that space. Right. And that proved very true. I did not figure out how to build a sustainable business over the course of those 4 years, which was part of why I went back to litigating. Was, my wife and I were ready to start a family, and hard to do that out of a backpack making 40 grand a year, while, traveling from country to country. So, plugging back into the litigation that I've been doing and doing that for another several years was awesome. It was like, it's that thing where when you take the leap, you're like, there maybe is that feeling of like, I never want to go back. I never want to go back to do that. And for me, 2017, having the chance to go back, and I had a really sweet opportunity to work with one of my closest friends. And I was able to plug in, not where I was when I left, but where I would have been had I never walked away from practicing 4 years earlier. By the time we got to 2020, to actually get to your question, I knew my creative muscles were fairly strong. I was like working on my first book manuscript, which is not the one that came out. It's one that still sits on a shelf. It'll come one day. And like I had a side hustle, like a creative community, helping people make progress on projects. And I knew I wanted to do more of that. And so that was part of the thing, is like, if I stay, okay, you get all the upsides of the golden handcuffs. But if you go, your whole life is basically a blank canvas. There's a lot of pressure at that point. But that was, that was definitely part of the picture of, if you make that leap, all of a sudden, everything's open to you. And I had the upside of that previous experience where, and there's so much fear associated with those leaps, and they're exhilarating and they're terrifying. But I'd gotten enough reps to know that fear is almost an indicator of where I need to go. So there you go. There's another 4-minute answer.
No, but here's the great thing about that answer, is that I resonate with every single bit of what you said. And here's why. I had very similar story. And I don't really tell I know that I get messages from people, one of these days you need to do a podcast where you tell your story, because people get bits and pieces of my story. But my story is very similar in the fact that I was a nurse for many years. I did my thing. And then I built this business, and I wanted to be home with my 2 daughters, when they were entering junior high, because I remember junior high and how hard that was. And I wanted to be home for them. So I took the leap and I left nursing. And in fact, I called it retiring. I retired from nursing, and I was home with my kids for 3 years, and it was amazing and it was great. And I was able to be creative, and I was able to be free and do what I wanted, and be my own boss. And then there came a time where I needed to go back. And so I went back into a hospital that I had never worked in, back into where kind of the beginning, into the operating room. That's where my home was in the beginning. And I kind of ran that ladder, but like those creative muscles tended to add. And I just kept feeling like I still wanted to build a business. I still wanted to do this business thing, but I really needed to be working and doing the thing and having the insurance and having all of the, the things that you're supposed to do. And that's what led me into legal nursing, is because I always said, it'd be great if I could do both, use my creative business side and use my nursing side. What would that be? And then one day I literally stumbled upon it, even though I had heard of it, 20 years ago. And then ended up in this business, kind of taking that leap as well. Now I've backed off on my hours in the hospital, and so it's a very similar experience in that I remembered what that terrifying feeling was, and here I just recently took that leap of like, okay, I'm going to feel that terrifying experience again, but knowing that even if I did, and even if I failed, I would still learn something from it. And it's not the end of the world because I've already done that. I thought that I had retired from nursing, and here I was, a failure on paper going back into the hospital. But in a nutshell, I actually, climbed a bigger ladder while I was back in the hospital, and I'm part of the medical staff, and I'm first assisting, and I'm doing all the things that I didn't do when I was young. So I crossed that, off the list. But then it was like, all right, time to take a risk. So my long story short was that I resonate very much in your story in that there had been. That's why I asked you that question. It was like because you had felt that feeling before of freedom, or I like how you put that in the creative space, because I like to think of myself as creative, but then sometimes I doubt that I'm creative. That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, I could come back and we can just do a full episode on that. That's one of my favorite things to work with people on.
Yeah, so I can relate to that. But yeah,
there are two things in what you said that I want to flag real quick. Number one is just this idea of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. You're familiar with all that good stuff? Yeah. So just that idea that you start at home in the familiar. There's that call to adventure, and it could be an external or an internal. And so, for you, like wanting to be home with your daughter, so taking that leap, going out, we're out there beyond the familiar. We're exploring the territory. We're learning what's there. We're taking on the obstacles, the adversaries. We're learning what there is to learn. Hopefully, we're gaining some treasure, so like some kernel of insight, some gem.
Right.
And then we come home. You return. We're not meant to live out there indefinitely, right? And so that thinking, when you say it was a failure on paper to go back, at the time I felt that way as well. And in retrospect, it was no. Like it's all just the natural cycle. Yeah. And there is no going out without returning. And there's no returning without going out. Like it all fits into the same picture. And the things that we learn on those things that did not work, like I would not be here having, well, let's say, succeeded in building this business. Like could fly off the tracks and explode any moment, but it hasn't for the first 2 years.
Knock on wood.
I would not have been able to do this without the things that I learned during those 4 years that I was practicing again. And those 4 years before, where I was out there trying to build 2 or 3 different businesses that just did not gain proper traction. Like it all fits together.
Totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And it's just recognizing that, or reminding ourselves of that's part of it, and that it isn't a failure. I joke about it because it sounds, I don't cliche, I guess, but there's a lot of personal development that goes into not buying into the fact that it's a failure, and that it is, all of those pieces fit into the puzzle.
That's the way we were conditioned, right? I mean, it's that feeling that's a failure it's almost universal in the way that and this is another thing I associate with when I say the red X. It's like we're conditioned to try to avoid getting the wrong answer, which, like you don't want to fail. Just try not that's the goal. And actually, no, that's not the goal. Like it was spent too many years aiming for the wrong thing.
Right. It's such a good way to put it. Okay. Well, now that we've established our stories here and how we ended up where we're at today,
let's get to work.
In your success, let's dig in. So, our audience, our target audience, as legal nurses, are attorneys, right? That being said, I did learn as we move forward that really other legal nurses are also our target audience. So we've got 2 sort of target audiences on who we want to connect with and who we want to build relationships with: attorneys, legal nurses. And when I jumped into this business, I met a lot of people that I've interviewed on this podcast have built success on LinkedIn. And their success looks different than each of them look different than each other, but they're all very similar. And so when I jumped into LinkedIn, I looked at their success and I thought, okay, I get it. I get why attorneys have been attracted to their content and why they've been so successful there. But for me, it was it was hard for me to connect with kind of building the same thing. And that's when I came across your content. And your content is geared towards attorneys, but it's also geared towards the rest of the LinkedIn community. And that's why I resonated with it. So tell me a little bit about, I know in your initial building of your business, you're ghostwriting for attorneys, you're building content for attorneys. You're a perfect example because your own content is so beautifully written. Um, I know that question is kind of all over the place, but if you could give me kind of an insight of how you um, decided to, start sharing that content towards attorneys, and how we can relate to that. That's a
Sure.
really
No, that's well, tell you what,
winded and wild question.
I'm not going to jump down a 5-minute rabbit hole on this one because I want to spend time talking about your specific niche
Okay.
and nursing consultants. And
Perfect.
as I mentioned to you when you asked me if I'd be up for coming on, I feel for y'all and like the challenges of being a legal nurse consultant on LinkedIn, where at this point, a contender we're working with about 25 leaders. I'm not great with I think 18 of them are attorneys.
Okay.
So I have the benefit of having the vantage point of a lot of different lawyers in different parts of the country, at different stages of their careers, different sizes of firms. And I was running some numbers. It's goofy to say, but I think it may be possible that I've written more LinkedIn posts for lawyers than anyone else alive.
Wow, what a stat.
It just in the sense that I've had my hand on more than 2,000 posts at this point, including my own, right?
Right.
And just thinking about who else would have written, and it's not even a claim to fame. It's such a peculiar thing to have done. Right. But I offer all that to say that I spend a lot of time thinking about lawyers and how they relate to the platform. And for nurses, like the legal nursing space it's not unlike the ghostwriting space, where if you have a particular background or skill set, there is an opportunity with a very low barrier for entry and a lot of access. And so by that, I mean, I get messages more or less weekly from somebody saying, I would like to ghostwrite like you do. How do I do that? And so they have some background as a writer, or maybe as a lawyer or a paralegal. And they say, I'd like to try that. And on LinkedIn, to do a thing like that, all you have to do is add it to your profile, right? I'm a ghostwriter. That's what I do. That's the barrier for entry, right? Hard to stay a ghostwriter, right? It's hard to actually gain traction, and I'm assuming that that's definitely true for the nurses out there as well, right?
Absolutely.
That there are so many like nurses who have jumped on this train, and I will say that almost I'm guessing trying to think of like how many, but I know I have more than 50 in my network easily, without exception, lovely people. Like every nurse that I have engaged with is a lovely person.
Right.
It's a really challenging environment, right? How you close the gap from, okay, you see the opportunity, you step into the opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
and people think, okay, like that's like a big step. That you're actually only at the starting line there.
Right.
And like the hard part is how you gain traction from that place. So how do you position yourself in the market in a way that you have a shot at attracting the people you're trying to attract to? And then how do you actually connect with those people, get on their radars and get their attention, get any sort of interaction, and then manage to move that toward the place where you get engagements, right? And you know, this is your journey. Like you've this is what you're doing in
1000%.
real time. So I 100% resonate with all of that. And I think because I see so many nurses in the DMs and I see so many nurses commenting, it's a problem, a design problem that I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about.
And we appreciate that.
Well,
that you're thinking of us.
I don't know that I've been all that helpful to date, but there are a few people I've wanted to be helpful toward, and you're certainly one of where I think you're doing a really good job with your content. And how long ago did you start this business?
I started this business a year and a half ago.
Okay, as for some reason I had like 2021 in my mind, but it was okay. So it was like 2020.
I started. I technically started in 2021. I didn't launch my business until June of last year. Like I was doing it, but I didn't officially launch it. The Bravery came out June of last year.
Okay, cool. And then when did you start getting more active on LinkedIn?
A month and a half ago.
You've only been on my radar since I was going to say like June, May or June.
And that's right around when I started to go, oh, LinkedIn. Okay. And really, and I told you this before we got on here, that a lot of it had to do with your content and the way that you write and I just resonated with how you told stories. And I hadn't seen that in this space. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but I just followed my gut in starting to just go, you know what? It doesn't hurt. I'm going to do this the way I want to do it. And so actually, and you saying that about my content means the world to me because it doesn't, to some people, it doesn't make sense. Like, why is she sharing this way when, and that's just me in my head thinking others are thinking those things, this whole imposter syndrome thing. But I knew that at the very least, I could connect with my own content and put it down at the end of the day and go, you know what? That's who I am. What can I say? I'm not going to apologize for myself. You get what you get. I always tell people that you get what you get. I talk a lot. I'm goofy, whatever. So I followed my gut, knowing that I didn't know if I was doing it right. And I continue to do that. Just kind of like this podcast. I started this podcast because I had a gut feeling to do the podcast. Well, I didn't know if it was the right thing to do. I didn't know if it would be brought up in court, which it was. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but I followed my gut and I was like, well, but I connect with it. It's that creative side. And so on LinkedIn, I didn't know that you could be creative. And so thanks to you, I realized, oh, I get it now. And so, yes, it's been a very short period of time, but it's me just going like this, kind of closing my eyes and going, well, I'm going to trust my gut on this. I don't know if this is what's going to work, but I connect with it.
Right on. The podcast you started last year, right? You've been doing that
this podcast I started I have 24 episodes now recorded.
Yeah.
I started in March of this year.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I'd gone back and tracked the history of the pod.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, sorry, you feel free to cut this if you want, but my impulse is to actually turn the tables a little bit, and we can like dig into how things have gone for you,
Okay.
and like I don't I don't actually know how effective things have. My guess is that you're still pretty early with,
Yeah.
or you are early,
Yes.
so like you're
In
still
what you're
laying the
getting at,
groundwork.
yes. Still very
Yeah,
early. People are just going like, who is this person? That's
yeah.
really
So
where
like
we're at.
there are some interesting threads we can pull there that I think would be illustrative and illuminating for other
Hmm.
people, and not just nurses, but other people who
Yeah.
are thinking about trying to make things happen on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
That like I won't jabber quite as long if I'm talking like about your specific situation, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Um, you had mentioned that when you were starting to look at LinkedIn or starting to talk, you had connected with other people who were leveraging the platform, say,
Yes.
differently.
Yes.
And can you give me just a quick rundown of like what that traditional playbook looks like?
Sure. Sure. It's really showing your expertise, right? So as a
Mhm.
nurse, we all have different specialties. So in my case, it would be the operating room. What kind of information can I share out there so that attorneys can see my expertise in the operating room and go, "Oh, I need an OR nurse. She knows what she's talking about because she's sharing, the 5 reasons to position a patient correctly." And
Mhm.
so it's very much taking like the book, the standard of care book, and really just sharing pieces of that to show that you know what you're talking about. And that's
Mhm.
really, and that's been successful for people. And people have been very creative with that and sharing their, whatever their specialty is and giving insights to that attorneys may not know. And I totally understand the value of that.
Well, can I pause you there? When you say that people have been successful in being creative with how they present that, what does being creative
Well,
in that type of content look like?
being creative in their um, presentation as far as visual presentation, like a diagram or their imagery, and then just not necessarily in their writing, but in their visual, um, catching the eye, like stopping the scroll,
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
So their
W-
image is scroll stopping. Okay, it's insightful for that particular specialty.
And how many nurses are we talking about when you think about people who've been successful with like, leading with that kind of content?
Well, the ones that I know have told me that their success, that they've received all of their client business from LinkedIn have been those nurses. I mean, I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, yeah. My I'm wondering, are we talking about like two people, five people? Well, I'm not asking you to name names or
No,
give me
no,
their
no.
numbers,
I
but
would say at least 5 people.
okay,
At least.
gotcha. Um, and we're defining success as a, that you're landing clients through LinkedIn.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
But we don't know how many clients necessarily. We don't know how
Well,
much income's being generated.
I do know for one in particular, she's very successful and she was very helpful in me just diving into LinkedIn. She's
Awesome.
incredibly successful. She's the one I say I always want to be you when I grow up. Um, but
Good.
she, in her space, she in her niche, she is the one that, all of us kind of go to, as
Interesting.
reference, and she would, share her standards in her specialty, and that's how attorneys would find her and hire her. And then those conversations I've had with more and more people, that's exactly what they've said as well, is
Right on.
that they've shared, standards of care, and, attorney reached out to them. As far as income, I can only speak for one particular person who says, who's incredibly successful. And when the rest of them say all of their clients came from LinkedIn, I'm going to have to assume that to me, that's success.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like that one nurse you're referring to as the person you want to be when you grow up, how long have they been how long have they been leveraging LinkedIn? Do you have an idea?
Much longer than myself. At least, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years. 3 years at minimum, 3 years.
Right on. So 3 years, and this person has a like specific niche in terms of the
Yeah, her specialty.
area specialty, right? And a lot of experience on the ground as in that specialty.
I don't know for sure. I can't answer that. But no, I don't know. But her sole experience has been in that specialty.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thank you for humoring my interrogation there.
I love it. Yeah.
And all right, so let's take that person you want to be when you grow up and their approach to content, which I would want to actually like look at their feed and get a sense of it. There's an advantage to being early in the game.
Right.
And like establishing things where that was an advantage I had.
Right.
Like I was able to look at the legal corner on LinkedIn and more or less like count the major people on my fingers and toes.
Right.
Right. And so I was like seeing like, okay, there's room to run out here. Right. And so like that's one advantage that I think,
yeah, I agree,
people maybe don't see, that when we look around and we see people who are successful, or we see people getting a lot of engagement or dot to dot. One thing that people, that like comparison trap, is like chances are that person has been doing this a lot longer.
Yeah.
And like that growth just comes with that.
Right.
Another piece of the puzzle that I'm increasingly thinking about is that just the idea of, do you have the goods? Do you know what you're talking about? There are a lot of people who maybe don't know what they're talking about. And like we were talking about earlier, we learn things on the fly. Right? There's value to that.
Right.
But to actually make it stick, the question I asked people is like, show me the goods. Like, what is it that you know more about, or that you're better at than just about anybody else? And then talk about that, like focus on that thing, right? Like what you're saying, like be that one of one.
Right.
That it's like very specific, and that runs counter to our intuition, right? That if we get too specific, then we'll lose out on all those other people. But what actually happens in digital spaces, I bet you learned this earlier from your time on Facebook and leveraging other platforms. You will not cut through the noise. Right. If you are, and this is a problem that I know a lot of people in the legal nurse space fall into, you are just a name among other names with the same letters behind your name, sending messages that look almost the same.
Right.
And it's an impossible situation.
Right.
You can't break through the noise that way. So there's that aspect of like, how can you stand out by getting super specific and then lean into that, which So like that person you're talking about is doing that in terms of their subject matter.
Exactly.
Sounds like you are doing that in terms of your area of expertise as well. But then you're also leaning into this thing that I'm such a proponent for, like this more personal brand point of view perspective of like, yeah, one way to be specific is about what you know and what you've done. And another way to be specific is you're the only you. Right. So showing yourself in a way that, you know, like somebody can get a sense of what you know and like, do you know what you're talking about? And start to trust you that way.
Sure.
And also get a sense of, do I like, what's this person like? And do I like them? Right. Do I think I'd be interested in even talking to this person, much less working with them? And so that's where, I mean, frankly, like what you've been doing just over these 2 months is, I mean, I know I'm biased in this, but I think you're really on the right track with doing both those things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. For me, it feels right. You know, I've definitely shared those, you know, tested that out and like, here are the top things to, you know, surgical positioning.
Well, and it doesn't need to be either or. That can be a both and, right? That it's just like with your content, right? You're just pulling from different buckets. But I would say for one like that, you may still want to rock a selfie on one of those like subject matter posts, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Or the flip side to that, the thing I say, like I think this for our clients, what I say is every post that we put out, I want to show my clients specific POV. And so in some way that, you know, if I'm trying to express what you just said and I don't even know what you're talking about, like I'm going to try to couch that in a story, even just framing of a story, of like a particular moment in the OR, or when you're dealing with a supervisor, that this thing came up, right? Just like framing it in a way that only Anna is the person who would share this post because this is your experience. Right? That dance between the specific and the general.
Exactly. And that is where the magic for me has been. It's lifted this pressure of being, I'll give you an example on this surgical position post I did, right? I managed to find a great image and shared that. It was great, but there was a two positions that were mixed up. And I got that. And so, you know, there were comments in there, you got it wrong. So there's this fear of like, I'm going to write one thing that's incorrect. And so, you know, then it's going to be, oh gosh, here we go. Yeah, I know that. Yes, I know it was the wrong, you know, that kind of thing. Versus sharing your story around that particular position, right? And when I had connected with your content, it was like this big light bulb moment happened where I go, oh, that's exactly it. Oh, I can relate a story that I had yesterday into how to get surgical positioning correct, right? And I was like, oh, well, nobody can say that the image is wrong because there is no image of surgical positioning, but it's my story and what I had just experienced or what I just taught a young nurse or whatever. And then it was like this breath of fresh air. So not only, and you're just proving my statement too, is saying that, I do know what I'm talking about because I've been doing this and this is exactly what happened and it happened to me. So nobody can question that, right? And that's part of that. Like nobody can question the fact that I experienced that. And that's what was very refreshing is to be able to share that and your expertise. And that's how I'm assuming you'll say the same thing, is that that's how we stand out as being different from each other. Like I have a lot of amazing OR nurse legal nurse friends on this platform, right? But we all know the same standards. We're all just as amazing as the next person. But the question then is, how do you stand out from I know one particular nurse who's on your page. She's amazing, and she's been doing this a very long time, and we both have a very similar background. It's like, how, okay, and I know that question will come up. How do I stand out over her? It obviously, we have different, someone's going to connect with her or someone's going to connect with me, but how do we break past that? I'll just use a different specialty. As a critical care nurse, how does this critical care nurse stand out over this critical care nurse? You know?
See, and my feeling on that is that the territory is so large that the challenge isn't necessarily how you stand out from not even other OR nurses or critical care nurses or even other nurses. It's how do you stand out from anybody? And how do you just and like that's really the opportunity, because I mean, it's not like if I'm an owner of a law firm and I've got a case and I do need a consultant on this, that I'm able to just like line up everybody who's in my network and be like, okay, and that's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
Right. We're talking about, as opposed to that idea of lead generation or like lead, it's demand generation, right? We're trying to stand out in a way that then when that lawyer needs that person, they don't even need a list, right? Like they've already done their shopping. That's the point, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
So it's, and hell, if there are two, like if there are two nurse consultants who are both, OR specialties, all the better. Like that's awesome. I think that's a rising tide that can lift all the boats.
Right. Which is I think what this podcast is. The intention of this is to only make it better for all of us, I mean, I would love to read amazing content on LinkedIn while I'm on there with other legal nurses. Like, hey, let's all do this. Let's all stand out and not be, I love the fact that you said that, a name with a bunch of initials, because we all look the same to attorneys. I'm sure you're absolutely right. We all have our letters and we all look the same, but how do we all, lift each other up, which is what I try to do. And we all can shine and not be that just a name or just a DM. I actually interviewed an attorney. This podcast hasn't come out yet, but I was replaying it this morning, and he was saying, he went into his DMs at that time and he was like, I have 5 DMs right now because it's really the same thing. It's like, how do we stand out to you guys so that we're not the annoying, person in the DMs? And we're not annoying, but we feel like we are because we're just competing with each other,
The DMs are annoying, right? It's not a specific person, right? I mean, LinkedIn has a serious problem where their DMs are just annoying. That if you are, and to be honest, I'm just like on the cusp of this. I don't have the problem that a lot of my clients have, where seriously, like I don't want to look at their inboxes because and it's like nurses are part of it, but it's it's lead gen people, it's marketing people. It's like financial planners. It's like it's just anybody. Like, oh, you're a leader. You have, and so I have clients who just ignore their DMs entirely. So like part of what we do is kind of clean it up, and we block and tackle, and we archive things that if you're just pitching, there's not a chance like my clients never even see it. Right. Because like I'm just cleaning that up so that they don't even look at it. Because what I'm trying to do is make that inbox useful to them. Right. And so it's like, all that to say, I'm not saying don't send the DMs.
Yeah.
And I would love for somebody to prove me or to like give me data points that counter my impression on this, but I don't think it works.
Yeah.
And so like if somebody out there is like, nope, the DM, like DMing 50 people a day, cold, like I get enough work, like it works enough of the time that it's worth it.
Yeah.
I would love to hear examples of those people. But yeah, my hunch is that it's just like that's not the way to get in front of people. That like that. Well, how you got in front of me initially
was not the
I'm
DM.
I'm way easier to, but it was like the comments, right?
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to lead into that next question, because what I did not realize until I saw it in action, and it makes complete sense, and it made sense on the other platforms before, but it's very eye-opening, is that the magic really happens in the comments. And this podcast, absolutely connecting with you to be on this podcast. There's another ghostwriter in your community who I had interviewed a couple weeks ago, who also hasn't come out yet.
Who's that?
Jordan Ring.
Jordan, right on.
Yeah, living in Portugal. Yeah. So it was in the comments, and I just loved whatever he had said, and he's really he shows up for people. I love watching how he shows up for people and the thought he takes in his comments. And I had done the exact same thing, and I was like, hey, and I think it was a podcast conversation. I said, if you ever want to be on a podcast, I'd love to have you. And I had a great conversation with him. And it was kind of the same thing, the care you take in your comments is very noticeable. And I think that it's very noticeable, obviously, because you take the time, but also because nobody's doing that. And so I've really tried to be mindful in really taking the time and really spending that time in the comment section and writing very meaningful questions, not solely because it stands out, but honestly, it's way more fun. If you're going to be on the platform, you might as well enjoy it, right? And have a great conversation, whether it leads to anything or not. I would love to hear more about your take on the comments and the magic in the comments. And then I actually have a question about that after I hear.
I will be efficient on this one, but it's really big, because the mistake that we make, and I think this is just about everybody, because we all learn LinkedIn the wrong way as the place to try to find a job or share a company press release. The thing we miss is that when we post, we make the mistake of thinking that the post is the point.
Right.
And the post is not the point. That's simply us planting our flag. Right. But if you want to leverage this platform effectively, you need to plug into the network. You have to plug into the actual network in order to start reaping the benefits of the network effects.
Yeah.
And almost nobody does this still. A lot more people do it today than did it 3 years ago.
Sure.
But I describe it as a matrix-like quality about it, where like, up until the point where I took whichever color pill is the one that sends you down the rabbit hole, I had no idea that network effect existed, that it was even a thing. And then once the platform opened up in a new way, all of a sudden I'm looking around being like, what the hell? Was this always here?
Right.
And I just couldn't see it? Or is this something new?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so many people, like you're like on the cusp there, right? Like you're just in this place where you're starting to be like, oh, wait a minute, there's something else going on here than what I thought LinkedIn did, right?
Yes.
And exactly. The comments really are the place where you can start tapping into that network effect, because I think about it just in network terms. Each of us is a node, right? We are just nodes. And if we are nodes and all we do is post to our own thing, and then we wait for people to come to us, there's not going to be a whole lot of energy flowing our way. right?
Yeah.
Not to get too woo-woo about it, but
No, it's true.
right, because all we are is just planting a flag, saying, "Here I am," and like this is something that I've started getting increasingly, I'm like, I don't know if irritated is the right word, but enthusiastic in my opposition to people saying that authority content is the way to do, that's what you should post. But by authority content, what they mean is basically taking a blog post, copying and pasting,
Right.
and then just having things that will not move on the platform. You're never going to get engagement because the stuff is not interesting. It's just information. It's basically a Google search in LinkedIn post form. And making the mistake of thinking that's the way that you are going to get people to know, like, and trust you. Right? To actually start tapping in, you need to start putting energy out into the network. You need to be connecting with other nodes, and the DMs are one way to do that, but the comments are the way to do that, right?
Totally
so
agree.
it's even commenting on, responding to every comment on your own post, and it's like actively going and looking for interesting stuff to weigh in on in a meaningful way. And the more you can do that, the more you are sending out those signals that then somebody else can reach out and respond to. And like you and I are a really nice example, actually, right?
It's
where
a perfect example.
yeah, like it's just I'm putting this stuff out there. I hope that the stuff that I'm learning and sharing is resonating with somebody, right? Just
well, it
that's
did
helpful
with
to
me,
somebody,
with me,
right? Well,
sure.
and that's it, right?
Right. You just proved it right here. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. And so it's so powerful because what happens is the beauty of the network effect is it's your voice gets amplified, and like you keep putting energy in, you keep putting effort in, that over time as you plug into the network effect, like the stuff that I get coming back is not a one-to-one, right? It's a multiplier. And so I will dismount here, but like when we get onto this call, I have a decent sense of you based on what I've seen from you, but you have more of a sense of me than I have of you, because you've been seeing more of my posts than the algorithm is showing me. The stuff I've seen from you, actually this week, Anna, now your posts are starting to pop up on my feed consistently. Yeah, they are coming now.
Yeah.
But before this week, I was not seeing your post at all consistently, right? So like there's this effect where when you show up to this call, we have a bit of a relationship, but there's this weird dynamic where I think you feel like you know me better than I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
And after this conversation, that gap will be pretty much closed, I think.
Yeah.
But it's a really weird dynamic that happens with a lot of people, where like once you start to show up in the way and resonate with people, that people are like, this is an example of how you become just that person for that one specific thing.
Right.
And like there's a tremendous amount of power in that. So.
Yeah, I am starting to see that as well on my own content. Is I'm starting to see those who are not even who aren't even the target of that particular post comment on the post because I've spent time getting to know them. It's really, you put that effort out there and you get to know them on their page, and you really start to enjoy hanging out over there, even though you have two totally different niches. But they end up showing up on your page and really supporting you because they've gotten to know you as well. And I am starting to see that most recently this week. But I think that it's a testament to being in the comments and really wanting to get to know people, not just like, the AI reply. So it is something that I did not realize the value in when I started posting. And then I started to just watch and see. And a lot of the times I see, the same people posting on the same people. And I was like, oh, this is the whole community. Oh, add me to the community. No, there's really not a community to add you to. It's like, this is the community. It's in the comments. So that being said, because I naturally am spending a lot of time in a community that's not necessarily, a community of attorneys, right? Because that's what I think on the surface, my community right now who's listening to this is thinking, okay, great. I'm going to spend all this time on these attorneys' pages. But really, I mean, your mission is to get these attorneys to post. They don't post. So it's a challenge to spend time in the comments under people that are our audience but are not posting. And the reason I say this is I think it was even a podcast episode of yours that said that the lawyers, attorneys are not hitting the like button, right? They're watching, because I can see on my analytics, the majority of the people that are seeing my posts are attorneys. That's my highest percentage. It's very rare that someone likes my post. I've had, like a past podcast episode attorney, like, those kind of people, but they're afraid to like the post, which means they're afraid they don't post, they don't comment, so they're there, but they're not there. So that creates a challenge for us who are all ready to be comment, to find the magic in the comments. But, when the posts aren't there, the comments aren't there, what would your advice be? I mean, they're still being seen. That's how I see it. You're still being seen, right?
Yeah. No, that's an awesome question. So I've developed a tool called your brand pyramid. And, at the top of the pyramid is your corner of the internet, which is kind of the piece of digital real estate you're out to claim and own. And so just based on our conversations and what I've seen from you, your corner might be something like, I think there's like an entrepreneurial piece to yours. So there's let's say I like using the idea of mission. So you're on a mission to be the best, nurse consultant in this particular niche, and to share your journey of building this business,
right?
And to inspire others, right? So in there, you've got, your what you do, you've got who you do it for, you've got kind of like what's driving you to build something, and how you want to engage with people. There's like the being informational and educational, but then there's also an element of being supportive and maybe even being inspirational. Right? So there's all this stuff going on. The layer below your corner is your people. And I think of that as your target audience, but target audience is almost always going to be more than one bucket of people. And so for me, one bucket is the business owners, attorneys, whoever who might hire us, right? If I relied on those people to engage with my content would be a fraction of what it is, right? So because I gained traction writing about creativity, I plugged into the creative corner of LinkedIn, the entrepreneurial corner of LinkedIn, the creators corner of LinkedIn. So I've got friends across all those things. And so just recently, I've been making the difficult shift mentally to saying, I am actually going to focus on the legal corner, and I'm going to leave that behind. And so I've been seeing my stuff go downhill in a way, it hurts the ego a little bit. It also, there's a feeling of loss of like, I've loved being over there, but I'm like, I'm tweaking my mission. It's like, I'm going to help these good folks in the legal profession.
Right.
And really try to focus on that. But the impact of understanding that there's more than one bucket in your target audience, like for you, I put this in a post, I think last week, and I had, I think 3 different nurses reach out saying, wait a minute, why am I going to be trying to post stuff to interest nurses if I'm trying to talk to lawyers? I was like, you're all there. You're all interested. You guys are awesome at commenting. Make stuff that is fun for other nurses to respond to.
Yep.
Attract that. Be the person attracting
Yeah.
those conversations.
Yeah.
And then that stuff is going to help your post move in general.
Exactly. Yeah.
In a way that then the number of those lawyers like I think that attorneys will still be that high percentage. There will just be more of them seeing it because you have more people engaging. So you're training the algorithm that your stuff is stuff that's worth spreading.
Totally.
And so like it's more and more I'm focused, how do you host the conversations? So it's like posting on an attorney stuff is all well and good, but the bottom line is, and attorneys aren't interested in talking to you, right? For the most part, right?
Yep.
Attorneys aren't interested in talking to me as well, right? Because it's like when they
Same
see
exact thing, yeah.
It's like it's true for anybody. If it's just that feeling when you know somebody's about to try to sell you something, and you just sort of tense up a little bit, right? And there's nothing really that we can do about that, right? I know that a lot of lawyers, they now view me more as a vendor than as a colleague, right? So I'm a lawyer who practiced for, like I've got some chops as a litigator.
Yeah.
But a lot of people see me as somebody who's about to try to pitch them on LinkedIn writing. So I was saying like, I'm not going to do that. But it's just that dynamic. There's nothing we can do about that. So it's like, how do we resonate with a certain group of people so that we can have those conversations, have that fun that you're talking about, that positive experience.
Yeah.
And then that's just like building our presence, building our footprint in the network, where there's more stuff, we become magnetic, right? More stuff comes our way.
Yes. And I love that you said that, because I'm going to give an example of a post that I did this week that it was my gut was telling me, this same thing. It's just, let's have a conversation with these legal nurses, because we're here. Let's do this. So I basically took everyone that I had a podcast episode with, and I had created a post, and in that post, I think I tagged, I don't even know how many people I tagged, but I didn't just tag them. I tagged them and said, oh, so-and-so, is a critical nurse guru, and then so-and-so, and I said something about them that because I had connected with them, and this post blew up. Not just because I had tagged people, but because other legal nurses saw this as like, oh, wow, I have so many DMs and so many emails with people sending me their CVs and their specialties. And like, if I need anybody in this specialty, and it was a perfect example of just like, I'm just going to have the conversation with who's there that's going to have the conversation. And that being said, I did have one attorney who I didn't even know repost my post and say, this is how you do it. Let's lift up the legal nurse, or something to that effect. It was like 3 sentences, but he shared my post. And sure enough, he knew, he was smart because he has all the legal nurses on his page as well. So his activity on his page blew up because he shared my post of lifting up all these legal nurses. So it just shows that, what you had just said, it's like you can't change the fact that your target audience is going to see you, but not necessarily comment or have a conversation with you because they know why you're there, especially those legal nurses with all those letters. But they're watching. And in order to be visible in their feed, you have to have a conversation. You have to show up. And it can be with other legal nurses. It can be with other networks, and you just proved what was happening on my side. So following my gut and seeing that magic, like I have never seen that many people.
So
my page.
Yeah, it's at 100 comments,
Right.
and And see, I haven't seen this post before now, but this is, as I'm scrolling through, what I'm seeing is that, so out of these comments, the majority, as I scroll through, are legal nurses. And by that, I mean 90% of them, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe 90% plus.
That.
So yeah, it's like almost entirely legal nurse consultants, right? So on one hand, it's like, why would you post that if you're trying to talk to lawyers?
Right.
But it's like, how many nursing posts have gotten that amount of engagement? And so just when it comes to being effective on this platform, we're trying to build our footprint as like just a member of the network.
Yeah.
Right. We're just trying to create more weight and take up more space a little bit. And how you do that is you tagged a ton of people. Conventional wisdom says don't tag that many people.
Oh, I know that. Yeah. Oh, I know that.
But conventional wisdom be damned. Like that was awesome, right? Because you're basically, the thing about it is like nurse consultants, there are a bunch of y'all out there, you are underserved in terms of content. Because who's making content for you?
Right.
Like almost nobody.
Yeah.
Right. So if you are like what you're doing there and what you're doing here with the podcast, we should talk about how like take more of the podcast stuff and get that out there. Like start cutting these clips, getting these clips out there. Yeah. Right. It's just you're being the person hosting the conversations. Like you're hosting the parties, you're hosting the network events.
That's how I approach it. Yep.
Yeah. And like if you start doing that and like you become magnetic.
Visible. Yeah.
Well, I mean, visible helps, but it's you got me thinking about, is there a difference between visible and magnetic? I want to know. The reason I would go with more magnetic over visible is this idea of influencers. That like a lot of, when it comes to LinkedIn, what so many of us think is like the selfies. Like I do a lot of selfies. It is not because I think I'm hot.
No.
It is because they work, right? Because they give a glimpse of not just what I look like, but my context, right? Like who I am, where I am. You know, you see me out for a run in the woods, or you see me in my little office with all my recording stuff, right? Yep. It just gives somebody a better sense of who you are. Yeah. And so that objection that I hear a lot of, like, I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm not, like, neither am I. Right. We're not trying to be influencers. Right. We're trying to make impact. And to do that, like, getting visible is really important. But when I do that, like and you're starting to rock the selfies as well. Good on you for that. Like, when you do that, there will be people who will be like, a selfie on LinkedIn, get out of here. It's right. Like, thank you. Right. I'll see it. See ya never, I guess, because you're about to unfollow, right? Yeah. But that's fine, because to be magnetic, you are both attracting and repelling. Sure. And embracing that reality is huge.
Yeah, it's more than being visible. I love that. And thankfully, my old life on the other platforms was selfie, and they did the same thing, and I was just here. And you started that when you even, I think there was a post and you talked about your selfie game and the reasons why you have the selfies. And it was, again, more permission. I always talk about permission on this podcast. People give permission to be like, okay, I can do that now. It was more permission to be like, all right, my selfies is, it's okay to put that. But it's true, because you do get an insight of who that person is. And it's so rare to see on LinkedIn. And that's why it's so attractive, because you're like, wait, that's what the person looks like, or that's what their background looks like. I can't tell you how many comments I get on my bookcase.
I love it.
And I had done that intentionally. I had shared a picture. One of my first selfies on LinkedIn was like, all right, I already know, because I filmed the podcast with the bookcase. I already know that people comment on the bookcase. So I'm just going to take a picture in front of the bookcase. And sure enough, the comments were not on me, but on the bookcase. but it does stand out, and I would look at it as being visible, but I love your description of it much better as being magnetic, because it is, I do think it is more than just like, oh, there's that person again. It's like, oh, wait, that person is in their little office, and oh, I wonder what those books are, and all of those things, or like your coffee, or in the outdoors, or in the coffee shop, like,
Yeah.
I always think like, it's kind of a really nice coffee shop. You do think more than just, oh, there's Tony again,
Yeah.
So,
So let's say visible is a step along the path to magnetism, right? In order to become magnetic, you do need to be visible, because if you're not visible, and
then
nobody even knows you're there.
nobody even knows you're there. You can be magnetic in your own home. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously we could talk for hours. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. This is right up my alley. I can geek out on this all day long.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you spending the time and really thinking about this community and how we can best show up and best be successful, whatever that looks like to, each of us. But I really appreciate you taking the time and really understanding where we're coming from and where our struggles are, and sharing your knowledge and wisdom and what you've experienced up until today. And I know now you will have a whole slew of legal nurses pumping you up and supporting you, because you've really helped us out. So I appreciate you spending the time here and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and story. And I look forward to, staying connected out there on LinkedIn, or like I actually used that, and that I said, oh, somebody I follow calls it Linky Land. And it was because of you. So out there on Linky Land, and making it really enjoyable to be there. So thank you for giving me permission to enjoy that. So
it was a pleasure. I had a great time, Anna. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. And can you and this will be in the show notes, can you let everybody know where we can find you?
Yeah, naturally. LinkedIn is the best place to find me. I have a weekly email newsletter called In the Digital Arena. Actually, by the time this goes live, I believe the In the Digital Arena podcast will also be live.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, you can find all that through my LinkedIn profile.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us in this fun conversation on the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting podcast. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and empowering as I always do. And I hope that you share this episode with your friends. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could leave us a review or comment, as I would love to share them in the future episodes. Or hop on over into my DMs and send me a quick message. I can be found on Instagram at anna.b.gray, on my website at limitlesslnc.com, and over on LinkedIn at Anna Gray. And I want you to remember, you are limitless. Until next time.